After a record-setting season, the High Point University Panthers women's basketball team rose to the top of the Big South, punching their ticket to the NCAA tournament for the first time in program history. Despite this incredible season, very few people know about this story and others like it in women's athletics. Only 3.2% of media coverage is devoted to women's sports, and the men's stories in newspapers outnumbered women's 23 to 1. Why is this the case?
The coverage is still not equal, like at all. I mean, you have as far as advertising and the games and the commercials about games coming up, I rarely see a WNBA game coming on or anything like that. It's always NBA or NFL. It's never any women's sports. And then the men, they're always playing on ESPN or the mainstream channels, and then the women are on other channels that most people don't have.
Sometimes it is hard to break out of that traditional model, because with a newspaper story, if we're covering, with high school games, there's a girls' game first and then a boys' game second. A lot of times it ends up being the boys' game is kind of the highlight one and the girls' one is second, because you just have to choose one.
There's a clear divide in the airtime between men's and women's sports. Much more time is spent talking about male athletes than female athletes, but there have been some significant steps to improve this inequality. Women's sports are trending up, and some events are gaining popularity and more attention from mainstream media, such as the Women's NCAA March Madness Tournament and the Women's World Cup.
I think, especially with the national tournament, I think it made a lot of steps in the right direction, just with the viewership and the clicks on social media and stuff like that. And I think when you put women's basketball on the big screen, it gives us a voice, number one, to get to show us or show the world what we can do, because a lot of people don't usually get to see it. People use the excuse of not being able to afford to show it on the national television channels, but I mean, once again, this year's tournament, I think just totally throws that excuse out the window.
I think people are starting to finally realize that the female athletes, they are just as competitive as the male athletes. I think their sports are just as fun to watch. And I think just a lot, also I think with social media, people are seeing big highlights on there, so it makes them be like, oh, I can tune into this and be entertained with it as well.
I guess recognizing female athletes as not just female athletes, just as athletes, period. I feel too often when you talk about men's sports, they're athletes, they're not men athletes. But women's, they're female athletes. But I think altogether we're athletes. We're all equal, really.
As the situation becomes easier to tackle, athletes and journalists are working to make a difference for the future.
I think I just want to continue to be a voice for it. It's something that we're all getting the opportunity to do, just like all the major men's teams do. We're getting our school paid for, and we're playing a sport that we enjoy and love. But I mean, I think I just want to use it to continue to have a voice and be a voice, whether it's for sports, women's sports, or if it's different social justice issues, things like that. I just want to be able to have a voice and help other people feel like they have a voice.
The future looks bright for women, especially as their collegiate and international sports are growing in popularity. As more sports networks and news outlets cover women's sports, interest in them will grow, and eventually women's athletics will become a staple in mainstream media. There's nowhere to go but up.